Hi, my name is Joe Johnson, and I was just wondering, are people being pitted against each other? Millennials against baby boomers, conservatives against um, liberals? I think so. I'm seeing a lot of people who are not tolerating each other anymore, and it's really kind of disturbing. Well, I've seen some YouTubes that young people are saying that they hate baby boomers. It's all our fault that the situation is the way it is. Well, you don't understand who rules you. Yes, we have rulers. And the problem started long before baby boomers were even born. But you got to do your own research to find out what's behind it. Anyways, let me start off with the 1950s. Back in the 50s, we had people that would quit high school to go get a job. And so the powers that be didn't want that. So what they would do is tell you that you can't get a good job unless you have a high school diploma. A lot of people went back to school to get their high school diploma. Now, why they were doing this was because they wanted everybody in college way back then. So back in the 1950s, things were a little bit easier as far as buying a house. My aunt bought a house for $8,000 with no money down. That was not unusual. You didn't have adjustable loans. What you did have is fixed rates, and usually maybe like 4%. And your house is paid for in 20 years. So if you bought a house in the 50s, it was paid off in the 70s. And also, the conditioning started with you had to get a high school diploma. Okay, then the 60s came along, and you at that point you needed a down payment, maybe not a lot. The houses went up from, your smaller homes went up from 8,000 to maybe 17. And they did double in price in 10 years. My mother bought a house for 17,500. It was brand new. It was a 3-bedroom. She didn't have to upgrade and put new cabinets in and everything like they're doing now, the new houses. You just bought the house and everything came with it. Um, and her house payment was $89 back then. And she got it paid for in the early 80s. It was a 20-year loan again. Then I bought a house, let's see, in I think it was 1967. That one was 19.5, a little bit smaller than my mom's, but my house payment, the tax and insurance was $136. Okay, so it was a little bit easier back then. That was true. And also in the 1960s, they conditioned the baby boomers that they had to have a college degree to get a job. When you would go into the newspaper, look for ads, most of them said you had to have a college degree. So the whole idea was to get people into college. And let me tell you what I think of schools. They really are indoctrination centers. They are there to condition you to think a certain way, not to be individuals, but to be more of a mindset of a groupthink. And there's a lot of revisionist history, which means that a lot's been taken out. If you want to know true history, you got to probably go into the archives of the universities and do your own reading. And if you want to know true history, read the books in the 1700s, 1800s. It'll be a little more accurate. But anyways, so as the 1960s bipped along, then there came women's liberation and trying to, basically give women a little more rights, which started out to be a good idea, but ended up taking rights away from men later on. Anyways, then the 1970s came along, and most people had a high school diploma. Most people wouldn't think of quitting high school. Most people had a mindset of going to college and getting a college degree so they can get that good job, right? Okay, so your houses were a little more expensive, but not much. Then we had a big real estate boom in the 70s, which the housing went up. Oh, but let me back up. In the early 70s, if you had a college degree and you were a woman, you can be a producer in Hollywood. They were looking for women at that time. Men were kind of left out. But anyways, the end of the 70s, the banks wanted to hire women as managers. Now, they didn't specify whether you had to have a college degree at that point. I know a lady who started off, her name is Phyllis, in the early 70s. She got right out of high school. She got a job as a teller, stayed with Bank of America, and by the late, no, not the late, I think by 2005 or 6, 2006, I think it was, she was a vice president of Bank of America, didn't have a college degree, and her retirement was $90,000 a year. She was making over a six-figure income. Now, who would have thought that? You know what I mean? If I had understood that, I would have just done that. But anyways, so we didn't know this at the time, and they were still saying you had to have a college degree. So now the 1980s come along. Things started changing. I remember it was the Reagan era, and they kept saying, well, there's a lot of greed. People are getting richer, and other people are getting poor. And, it was a great time. And I kept thinking, no, it's not. Because corporations were now conditioning people not to ask for much. The message went out that we need to hire temps and not and have a freeze on hiring and just put temps in that place, temporary workers, because we don't have to pay benefits. That was conditioning people that not to go ahead, that you're going to be paying for your own insurance and your own retirement. Where before, if you worked for a company for 20 years, they paid your retirement, and a lot of companies would pay for your insurance. The big companies would. Now you were being asked to pay for part of that. And if you didn't like it, no problem, we got a temp to replace you. I mean, that was kind of the feeling people had. So it wasn't as great as the media was saying it was. And also, in the past, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you didn't get laid off if you worked for corporate America. If you worked for aerospace, you had a chance of being laid off, but not in the 80s. You could get laid off, okay? And they would hire a lot of temps and put a freeze on hiring to condition people that corporations like temps better because they don't have to pay for benefits. That's a conditioning. Okay, now we go in, and also at that time when it came to the colleges, you get a college loan, you had to pay it back. Where in the 70s, if you got a college loan, you didn't have to pay it back. A lot of people went to college and never paid their student loan. And the cost of college, a four-year college, is $400 to $800. And you could probably pay that off in 2 years. Now in the 80s, the cost of a four-year college was maybe $2,000 to $3,000, depending on the school you went to. If it was just a state college, it could be a little more. If you went to like UCLA, it would be a little more. But it wasn't $500,000 and it wasn't $50,000 or anything like that. And now in the 80s, you had to pay your student loan off. Okay, so now we fast forward to 90. I remember them mentioning on the media that the price of college is going up. Now they had you because you're being conditioned, your parents have been conditioned that you can't get a good job without a college degree. And everybody's going into college. Now it's time to raise the price. Okay, so they did. Also, they kept real estate down for a while, and then 1996 to 2006, the prices of houses were going up, and I kept thinking this is not a good idea, because how can these people afford these houses? Because you ought to qualify for those loans, you almost have to make $100,000 a year. Most people weren't doing that, so I knew something was wrong. I was an escrow at the time, and what I saw coming across my desk 2002 told me that we're going to go into massive foreclosure. Because what goes up has to come down. And I just couldn't understand why people were how they were getting these loans. That's before I understood that there was a thing called the liar's loan. Who created that? That was done by the banks. Okay, it wasn't done by your local Babyboomer, that was for sure. But anyways, so along with that came the high prices of education. Making the people that go to college now debtor, just they're debtor slaves. You're a debt slave. I mean, some of these kids are coming out of college with $100,000 loan. It's like the price of a house or a condo. It used to be, and I don't know how they're going to pay it off. I mean, they're going to have hardly nothing when they retire. This is not good. And not only that, but during the 80s and the 90s, and one of the reasons why, two reasons why they kept the price of housing up. Number one, who makes the most money when the houses are high priced? Your county does. They don't improve your house. All they do is evaluate your house, say, okay, your house is valued at this amount, you need to pay us this amount, or we'll take your house away. They don't do anything. They don't improve your house or anything. They just slap a tax on it. So they like high prices. Gives them more money. Okay? People think it's just the real estate agents and the loan agents that are making the big bucks. No, it's the county. It's the government. So you got now 30 and 40-year loans. Okay? And when I figured out the value of a house back in the 1990s. If you bought a house at $175,000, after 30 years you paid $300,000. You know, with the interest and all that. That didn't happen back in the 60s. You bought a house for $17,500 in 20 years. You know, it wasn't 3 times the amount of the house. That's for sure. So you have that with rising prices of college. And now you have to pay your student loan back. And if you're a baby boomer and you lost your job in your 50s, you went back to college, if you don't pay it back, they tap your Social Security. You see, so you got to be careful of that. So now we have less opportunity, all of us, than prior generations. You see, this is a plan. This is not a good thing for anybody. It really isn't. And so we have a younger group of people who have been conditioned by the school system and by the media to blame one group and to think that the baby boomers had it so easy. They didn't. They did not. We didn't have it that easy. Our parents didn't give us everything we wanted. I never got anything I wanted. That's for damn sure. Matter of fact, my mother had to go to work. I had to babysit my sister and give up all my summers to take care of a child. My sister was about 1 year old when my mother went back to work. I didn't have a life. And so how was that a better life than a lot of the baby boomers have? It's not. So we didn't have the benefits of computers and a lot of other things. I mean, every generation, since the beginning of time, you can't say, well, I don't know if one generation has it better than the other. It depends. You know, the younger generation has more technology than we did. So all in all, we're in this together. And it isn't it isn't your average everyday person giving you a hard time. It's the people way on top. Okay, there's a cabal that rules us, and they have planned this from the very beginning, and they have all the money in the world, and they don't even work as hard as you. But I'm not going to tell you who they are. You got to find that out for yourself. Now I'm going to switch from baby boomers and millennials to right and left. When I was younger, my parents were Democrats, and some of my girlfriends, their parents were Republicans. We didn't hate each other. What I'm seeing is this left-wing group of people who think that everybody on the right is a bunch of racists. Not necessarily so. I mean, what I'm saying is it's a perception that was given to you, and it's pitting you against that group. See, you got liberals against conservatives. You got millennials against baby boomers. You got women against men. Divided you fall, that's for sure. And united you can conquer. So think of that. Don't be so easily manipulated and pitted against somebody else because of what the media tells you. You know, you got to do some of your own reading. As you can see behind me, I have a library. I always have. I always like to find out what's going on behind the scenes. I'm that curious. Some people aren't. But anyways, I don't want to make this too long, but I wanted to give you my point of view here and stop hating. You're going to get nowhere that way. You're hating your fellow Americans is what you're doing, and that's a very degenerate thing to do. So think about what I said, and you don't have to accept it, but you know, it's a different point of view. Please do not believe everything off that boob tube. I'm usually listening to the alternative media, but I'm not always believing it. I keep an open but cautious mind. Um, so, anyways, consider that and stop hating people.